It's Friday, February 6th, 2026. And uh, if you're listening to this from anywhere in the northeastern part of the United States,
Mm.
Anywhere from, say, the Ohio Valley all the way to the coast of Maine, you probably had a very specific feeling this morning.
Oh, I know the one.
You open the door, right? Maybe just let the dog out or grab something from the car
Yeah.
and the air. It didn't just feel cold. It felt hostile.
It's a physical sensation. It's not just a number on the thermometer. It's the kind of cold that just bypasses your coat entirely and feels like it goes straight for your marrow.
Exactly. It's that moment where, the atmosphere stops being this backdrop to your day, and suddenly it feels like an active antagonist.
It's a shock to the system, for sure. It wakes you up, but not in a refreshing way at all.
No. And look, we talk about weather all the time. It's the ultimate small talk. Cold enough for you,
Yeah.
all that. But what is happening right now as we stand here on the precipice of this weekend, this is not small talk material.
Not even close.
We're not looking at a standard February cold snap where you just, throw on an extra scarf and you're good to go. We are staring down the barrel of a massive, truly an anomalous atmospheric event.
Mm-hmm.
The data we pulled for this deep dive, and we've gone through reports from ABC News, some really detailed analysis from CBS New York, the National Outlook from USA Today, it's all painting a picture that is honestly a little alarming. They're using words like brutal, savage, relentless.
And I'm usually the one to sort of pump the brakes on the hyperbolic language. Meteorologists, we have a tendency to get a little excited when we see a lot of purple on the weather map.
Right.
But in this specific case for this weekend, those adjectives are actually doing a lot of heavy lifting. They're describing the data accurately. What is unfolding over the next 48 hours is widely predicted to be the coldest air of the season so far. And frankly, for a lot of places, this is shaping up to be the most savage cold outbreak of the entire 2025-2026 winter.
That is a heavy statement. Considering this winter hasn't exactly been a walk in the park.
Yeah.
One of our sources even called it the relentless winter, and I think that's a phrase that really resonates with a lot of people right now.
It does. It feels like we've just been battered. We get a little bit of a recovery, and then we get battered again.
Yeah. But our mission today isn't just to commiserate about the thermostat setting. We really need to decode specifically what is hitting us this weekend, February 7th and 8th. We need to separate the hype on the social media panic from the actual physical hazards.
Which is such a crucial distinction to make because, very often the things people tend to panic about, like the total snowfall amount, for example, those aren't always the things that are actually the most dangerous.
Right. It's not about how many inches you get.
Not this time. In this scenario, we're not looking at some kind of day after tomorrow burial in snow. What we're looking at is a complex fluid dynamics problem. It involves wind shear, a rapid drop in thermal energy, and a very specific atmospheric phenomenon that everyone loves to hate.
Don't say it.
The polar vortex.
The dreaded polar vortex. It has become such a buzzword, hasn't it? It sounds like a villain from a bad sci-fi movie. The vortex is coming.
It really does.
But before we get into the physics of all that, let's just talk about the human impact for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this particular event matter so much?
It matters because of density. It's pure numbers. We are talking about 100 million people. 100 million currently in the direct path of this system.
Wow.
That is effectively 1/3 of the entire population of the United States. And when you have an event of this magnitude targeting the northeastern corridor, which is, in so many ways the economic and infrastructural spine of the country, the stakes just get incredibly high.
It's not just about comfort.
It's not about being uncomfortable waiting for the bus. It's about stress on the infrastructure. It's about logistics for emergency services. And it's about real-life safety issues for vulnerable populations.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds on this. We're calling it an Arctic blast, which, I don't know, that feels a bit generic. Let's really look at the scope and the scale. You mentioned that 100 million people number. That really stuck out to me in the USA Today report.
It is a staggering number,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a direct result of the trajectory of this air mass. Usually cold air might seep down into the northern plains, maybe clip the Great Lakes, and then it modifies, it warms up a little bit as it heads east.
This is different.
This is very different. If you look at the pressure maps from the National Weather Service, this air mass is, well, the word they use is lunging southward.
Lunging. That's a very aggressive verb to use for air.
It is, and it implies velocity and a lack of modification. This air is coming straight down from eastern Canada, and it's moving with speed. It isn't meandering, it's driving. It's sweeping across the Great Lakes, it's enveloping the Ohio Valley, and then it is just absolutely slamming into the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic.
And because it's moving so fast, it doesn't have time to warm up.
Precisely. It hasn't had time to moderate over the ground. It is bringing its source region, the Arctic, directly to our doorsteps. It's like importing a piece of the North Pole.
So help us calibrate this. We live in a world of constant hyperbole. When we say cold, are we talking, put on a hat cold, or are we talking about something that's really historically significant?
We are talking about temperatures dropping into the single digits or below zero across the vast majority of the Northeast.
And that's just the air temperature.
That is just the ambient air temperature. That's what a thermometer in a wind-protected box would read. We haven't even started to factor in the wind yet.
Right. Which, of course, is what makes it so much worse.
Well, the report specifically highlights that dozens of daily record low temperatures are in jeopardy for Saturday, February 7th, and again on Sunday, February 8th.
Dozens of records.
Dozens. And breaking a daily record, that's significant. It means that for this specific date in history, going back 100, maybe 150 years in some places, this is the coldest it has ever been recorded. So when you're threatening records across a region as wide as the entire Northeast, you're dealing with a true statistical outlier.
Let's drill down into some of the regional specifics then. I know we have a lot of listeners in and around New York City who are probably looking at their weekend plans and wondering if they should maybe cancel that brunch reservation.
Yeah.
I saw the forecast, and I honestly did a double take.
It is stark. And New York City is what we call an urban heat island. All that concrete, all the activity usually keeps it a few degrees warmer than the surrounding suburbs.
Right.
But this cold air mass is so potent, it's just completely overwhelming that effect.
Right.
We are looking at highs. That's the warmest it's going to get all day. Only in the 20s on Saturday.
Okay, that's rough. And Sunday.
And then Sunday, the bottom drops out. Highs in the teens.
Highs in the teens. That means even at, high noon? With the sun shining, it's going to feel like the inside of a commercial freezer.
Colder, actually. Most freezers are set to 0 Fahrenheit, so the Sunday morning lows, which will be in the single digits in the city, will be right on par with your bag of frozen peas.
Wow.
And that's the city. If you go just a little bit outside into the Hudson Valley, Connecticut, Western Mass daytime temperatures are going to be struggling to even rise out of the single digits. We are talking about a 48-hour period where the temperature profile is essentially just flatlining at the bottom of the chart.
You mentioned earlier that this fits into the narrative of the relentless winter of 2025-26. I think context is really important here. If this happened in, say, December in isolation, it would be bad. But happening now in February, after we already dealt with so much this season.
It absolutely creates compounding effect. Infrastructure is already stressed. You have road salt supplies that are depleted in some municipalities. People are they're fatigued. The psychology of winter is fascinating.
It is.
By February, we're all usually looking for those false spring days, a little taste of what's to come. Instead, we are getting what is being called the most brutal shock of the entire season. It's a morale killer as much as it is a physical hazard.
Okay, so let's pivot to the why. We kept teasing it in the intro. The polar vortex. I feel like ever since, 2014 when that term went viral?
That was the year.
Ever since then, it feels like every single time it gets below freezing, someone on social media screams, polar vortex. Is this actually a polar vortex event, or are we just using the scary words to get clicks?
It's a fair skepticism to have. Back in 2014, the media latched onto a term that meteorologists had been using in technical discussions for decades, and you're right, they turned it into a monster movie title.
Yeah.
But in this specific instance, sources, and this includes the technical discussions from places like Weather Trader and NOAA, they are explicit. This is a polar vortex event. But, and this is a really big but, we need to be very precise about what that means scientifically.
Please do, because I think most people, myself included, kind of imagine a literal tornado of ice sitting over the North Pole that just decides one day to go on vacation to Florida.
That's a great image, but not quite the physics of it. So there are actually two polar vortices. There's the stratospheric polar vortex, which is way, way up high,
Yeah.
about 60,000 to 100,000 feet up.
Way above where planes fly.
Way above. And that one is usually a very tight, coherent swirl of winds that basically acts like a fence,
Yes, that's
keeping
good.
the absolute coldest air locked in the Arctic during the winter. Then there's the tropospheric polar vortex, which is much lower down in the part of the atmosphere where all of our weather happens.
Okay, so stratosphere is high, troposphere is us.
Correct. Now, what can happen, and what has happened in this case, is that the high-altitude vortex can get disrupted. It can be stretched, or it can wobble, or in some extreme cases, it can even split in two.
And what did that do?
When that happens, it weakens that fence I was talking about. The fence that holds all the cold air back. This allows a piece of that cold pool, what we call a lobe, to break off and sink down into the troposphere.
A lobe. That sounds almost biological, like a lung or a piece of a brain.
It behaves a bit like a fluid blob. Imagine you have a spinning top. If you tap it gently, it wobbles. If it wobbles enough, it swings out really wide. This lobe is a very wide swing of that polar circulation. The sources are very specific in calling what's hitting us this weekend a tropospheric polar vortex lobe.
So let me get this straight. It's not just cold air that happened to blow in from Canada. It is a piece of the actual Arctic atmosphere that has literally been relocated.
Precisely. It is a displacement event, and I love that analogy you mentioned in the pre-show notes, the open freezer door.
Yeah, that one always makes sense to me.
It's a very accurate way to think about it. The jet stream is the door. Usually in a strong vortex pattern, that door is shut tight, keeping all the cold air in the Arctic. But this vortex disruption, this wobble, it essentially kicks the door wide open.
And the cold air spills out.
It pours out. That Arctic air is dense, it's heavy, it wants to sink. So when that door opens, it doesn't just drift, it spills. It pours south like molasses, but much, much faster. That's the lunging motion we were talking about earlier. The engine driving this whole Arctic blast is the physical weight of that displaced cold air pushing the warmer air in the mid-latitudes out of the way.
That really helps explain the relentlessness of it. It's not just a breeze passing through. It's a heavy blanket of air just settling on top of us.
That's a good way to put it.
But, as we all know, temperature is only one variable in the equation of, well, human misery. We have to talk about the wind.
The wind is the true antagonist in this story. If this were a calm, still cold, like a radiator cooling down, it would be manageable. You bundle up, you cover your skin, you're fine. But the wind fundamentally changes the thermodynamics of how your body interacts with the air.
This is the multiplier effect of wind chill. And I feel like a lot of people see that wind chill number on the forecast and think it's just feels like temperature, like it's subjective.
But it's based on hard physics, right?
It is entirely physics. It's all about something called the boundary layer. Your body is constantly generating heat. In still air, you create this tiny, invisible bubble of warm air right next to your skin. It's like your own personal insulation layer.
A thermal force field.
Exactly, a great term for it. But wind strips that boundary layer away. It literally blows that warm air bubble off your skin. So your body has to work overtime, burning calories, to heat up a new layer of air, which then immediately gets blown away again.
And again and again.
It's a process called convective heat loss, and this weekend, the rate of that stripping action is going to be extreme.
So let's look at the velocities. What kind of numbers are we dealing with here?
On Saturday, we are expecting gusts up to 50 miles per hour. I want to repeat that, 50 miles per hour. That is barely below tropical storm force, but it's occurring within an Arctic air mass. That's just a brutal combination.
It is. And even on Sunday, as the main system starts to move out, the pressure gradient, that's the difference in atmospheric pressure that drives the wind, it remains very tight. So we're still going to be seeing gusts up to 30 miles per hour.
So, okay, you combine 50-mile-per-hour winds with single-digit ambient temperatures. The math on that gets scary very quickly.
The math gets life-threatening. The sources from CBS New York mention an extreme cold warning is in effect for the entire New York City and New Jersey area. We were looking at feels-like temperatures, which is a measure of that heat loss we just discussed of, between -15 and -35 degrees Fahrenheit.
-35. In the most densely populated city in the country.
Yeah.
That's hard to wrap your head around.
It is. And if you go inland, up into the interior northeast and across New England, those -30s are going to be widespread. In cities like Boston and Buffalo, we are looking at wind chills in the negative teens and negative single digits lasting well into Monday morning.
This brings us squarely to the health hazards. And I want to spend a moment here because I think there's a certain tough guy mentality, especially in the Northeast. People think, I grew up here, I can handle the cold. But -35 is different. It's not the same game.
It's biological. It's not about toughness. We need to talk about the frostbite timeline. This is a metric that NOAA and the National Weather Service calculate very, very carefully. In areas like Lake Placid and Saranac Lake up in the Adirondacks, where the wind chill is expected to hit that -35 mark, frostbite can occur on exposed skin in as little as 10 minutes.
10 minutes. I want our listeners to really process that number. 10 minutes is nothing. That's the time it takes to walk to the corner store. That's waiting for an Uber that's running a little bit late.
It's scraping the ice off your car's windshield.
Exactly. And the really insidious thing about frostbite is that you don't really feel it happening at first, do you?
No, you don't. The extreme cold causes something called vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels clamp down, especially in your extremities, to keep warm blood in your core to protect your vital organs, your heart, your lungs.
Yeah, your body is trying to save itself.
It is, but that leaves your nose, your ears, your fingers, and your toes with very little blood flow. Then, the water inside your skin cells literally starts to crystallize. It freezes solid.
That is a horrific image.
Yeah.
Ice crystals forming in your cells.
That is what frostbite is. And in 50-mile-per-hour winds, that process accelerates drastically. That tough guy mentality, it just doesn't work against thermodynamics. The physics will always win.
And hypothermia is the systemic cousin of frostbite, right?
That's right. Frostbite is local tissue damage. Hypothermia is when your entire core body temperature drops to a dangerous level. With winds this high, if you're not dressed properly, if you're wearing something like denim jeans instead of proper wind-blocking layers, that wind just cuts right through.
And you lose core heat fast.
Incredibly fast. Your core temp drops, you start to get confused, you might stop shivering, which is a very bad sign, and it quickly becomes a full-blown medical emergency.
So the actionable advice from the sources, it's pretty strict. It's not just wear a hat and gloves.
No, the primary advice is limit time outdoors. Period. If you do not have to be outside, do not be outside. If you do, you need to cover all exposed skin. No gaps at the wrists, pull the scarf up over your nose, every inch matters.
And the sources also emphasized survival kits.
This is absolutely crucial. If you are traveling, and we're going to talk about the road conditions in a second, you must have blankets, extra clothes, and maybe some chemical heat sources in your car. If your car slides off the road into a ditch and a next to 30-degree wind chill and your engine dies, that car becomes an ice box in a matter of minutes. You cannot rely on the car's heater working forever.
And I have to mention the pets. I still see people walking their dogs in this kind of weather, and sometimes the dogs just look miserable.
The rule of thumb is very simple. If it's too cold for you, it is too cold for them. Even northern breeds like Huskies and Malamutes have their limits, especially when you factor in this kind of wind chill. Their paws are in direct contact with the frozen ground.
It's brutal.
It is. Bathroom breaks should be limited to the absolute minimum time necessary. And for anyone with livestock, you need to be checking on them, ensuring they have windbreaks, and extra dry bedding. The caloric needs of animals skyrocket in this weather just to stay warm.
Okay, we've frozen everyone solid with the temperature talk.
Yeah.
Now let's add the precipitation into the mix. So, Section 4, the snow. Now, looking at the maps, this isn't a blockbuster storm in terms of volume, is it? We're not seeing predictions of 2 or 3 feet of snow.
Correct. And that can be deceptive for people. It's being described as a nuisance to moderate event in terms of total accumulation.
Nuisance?
Nuisance is a meteorologist's term for it won't bury your house. It does not mean it won't completely wreck your commute or your travel plans.
Let's track the timeline on this because the system is moving pretty fast.
It's a very fast mover. It actually started Friday morning, today, back in the Midwest. Michigan, Indiana, Ohio are seeing a dusting to maybe 2 inches. As we speak, this Friday afternoon, the system is shifting east into eastern Kentucky and western Pennsylvania.
And then tonight?
By this evening, Friday night, that snow spreads across Appalachia, all the way from the Smoky Mountains up to upstate New York. Then on Saturday, the main event shifts to the coast.
So Saturday is the day for New England.
Saturday, February 7th, the focus shifts to New England in areas just north of New York City.
Okay, let's talk totals. What about a city like Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh could see up to 2 inches.
And New York City, the big one.
The classic New York City forecast. It's likely just going to be flurries or some light snow passing through, maybe a dusting to 1 inch at the most. Just enough to make the sidewalk slippery and for everyone on Twitter to get angry.
And Boston.
Boston, similar story. Probably 1 to 2 inches. Again, not a lot of snow.
But there is a zone that's going to get more. A jackpot zone, as they call it.
There is. And it's along the eastern I-90 corridor. We're talking about cities like Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Erie, Cleveland. They are looking at a more significant 2 to 4 inches.
Okay, I can practically hear our listeners in Buffalo rolling their eyes. 2 to 4 inches, that's a Tuesday for us.
Yeah.
Why are we flagging this as being so dangerous if the totals are that low?
Because of the snow squall phenomenon. This is absolutely critical to understand. A snow squall is not a snowstorm. A snowstorm is a marathon. A squall is a violent sprint. It's a brief, incredibly intense burst of heavy snow and high wind.
It's like a summer thunderstorm, but with ice and snow instead of rain.
That's a perfect analogy. The atmosphere is very unstable. You have this incredibly cold Arctic air rushing in over relatively warmer ground. And even if the ground is freezing, the air moving over it is so much colder. This creates instability. You get these powerful convective bursts.
So what does that look like if you're driving?
You could be driving on I-90 with clear blue skies, and 2 minutes later, you hit a literal wall of white.
Visibility just goes to zero.
Instantaneously. To zero. And because the snow is so dry and powdery, a result of the extreme cold, and the winds are gusting to 50 miles per hour, the snow doesn't settle. It just blows horizontally. It creates a ground blizzard.
So the danger here isn't getting your car stuck in a snowdrift.
The danger is a high-speed multi-vehicle pileup because you couldn't see the brake lights of the truck in front of you. Even if the total accumulation for the day is only 2 inches, the rate at which it falls during a squall, combined with that chaos of the wind, makes it one of the most dangerous driving conditions of the entire winter.
And statistically, these squalls are responsible for a lot of accidents.
Disproportionately so. They are disproportionately responsible for major multi-vehicle pileups on highways. So if you are on the roads Friday or Saturday, especially in that I-90 corridor, you need to treat a dark cloud on the horizon as a very, very serious threat.
That brings us perfectly to the broader infrastructure discussion. We tend to think of infrastructure risks with things like hurricanes or big ice storms, trees falling down. But can this kind of dry, cold, and wind cause that kind of physical damage?
Oh, absolutely. We have to look at the material science of the power grid and the environment around it. First, the trees. In winter, trees are dormant, the wood's moisture content is lower, and the wood itself is frozen solid. Frozen wood is extremely brittle. It loses all of its elasticity.
So it doesn't bend in the wind, it just breaks.
It snaps. A healthy oak branch that would just sway and bend in a 50-mile-per-hour summer thunderstorm might shear right off in a 50-mile-per-hour Arctic blast. And when those heavy frozen branches snap, they fall on power lines.
And so we are expecting power outages from this.
The sources identify the southern and central Appalachians, the mid-Atlantic, and the interior Northeast as being high-risk zones for wind damage. The combination of brittle trees and the high wind loading on the wires themselves is just a recipe for regional power outages.
Let's just pause on the implications of that for a moment. Losing power in July is annoying. Your ice cream melts, you get hot and sweaty. But losing power when the ambient temperature is 0 and the wind chill is -30.
That is a survival situation. It's that simple. Most modern homes, even well-insulated ones, lose heat surprisingly fast. If you rely on electric heat, you're in immediate trouble. Even if you have gas heat, the blower and the pump need electricity to run.
And the wind makes it worse.
The wind strips heat from the exterior of your house, accelerating that cool-down process. If the power goes out, the clock starts ticking on the risk of hypothermia inside your own living room.
Which leads directly to the other big homeowner nightmare in this situation: frozen pipes.
The silent destroyer. It's basic physics. Water expands when it freezes. It's one of the few substances on Earth that does that. And it expands with an incredible amount of force, more than enough to crack steel, copper, or PVC pipes.
So if you have a pipe in an uninsulated wall or a crawl space,
it's a ticking time bomb. The advice is pretty standard. Open up the cabinet doors under your sinks to let the warm air from the room circulate around the pipes. And maybe even keep a very small trickle of water running from your faucets.
that always feels so wasteful.
It sounds wasteful, but moving water is much harder to freeze than standing water. It can save you from thousands of dollars in water damage.
There was also a specific note I saw in the NOAA data about ice safety, which seems kind of counterintuitive. It's going to be so cold, shouldn't all the ice be safe to walk on?
You would think so, but you have to remember we've had a relentless but also a very erratic winter. We've had warm spells recently. The ice on lakes and ponds might have thawed and then refrozen. It might look solid from the shore, but the internal structure of the ice could be rotten or dangerously thin in spots.
And the wind doesn't help?
The wind buffering the surface can make ice formation very uneven. So the warning is explicitly against walking on any frozen bodies of water where the thickness is uncertain. Just because the air is -10 does not mean the lake is suddenly safe to walk on.
Okay, we have painted a fairly bleak picture here. We have the displaced Arctic lobe, we have the tropical storm force freezing winds, the blinding snow squalls, and snapping power lines. I think everyone is sufficiently terrified now. So let's look for the exit. Section 6. The outlook. When does this all end?
The good news, and there is definitely good news, is that this is a transient event. The atmosphere is moving far too fast to lock this pattern in for weeks on end.
So it's a quick, sharp shock.
Exactly. Walk us through the recovery timeline.
Sunday morning. That is the bottom of the curve. That is the nadir of this event. Lows in the single digits for New York City, wind chills still around -15. If you can get through Sunday morning, you have officially survived the worst of it.
And Monday, still pretty bad.
Monday morning will still be cold, no doubt. Places like Boston will still feel sub-zero with the wind. But the core of the cold air, that lobe we talked about, is actively lifting out. It's moving out into the Atlantic. And then the magic words appear in the forecast. A pattern change.
Yes. By the middle to the end of next week, the jet stream completely readjusts. The deep trough that dug down to bring us all this cold, it lifts out, and a ridge of high pressure builds in behind it.
And in plain English, a ridge means
A temperature rebound,
Yeah.
a significant one. We aren't just going back to freezing. We are expecting average to even above average temperatures for much of the East Coast.
So we're going from a -35 wind chill on Saturday to, what are we talking, 40s?
It's very likely we'll see widespread 40s and maybe even touching 50 degrees in some spots down south toward the end of the week.
That is absolute atmospheric whiplash.
It is. And psychologically, 40 degrees is going to feel like a tropical vacation after what we go through this weekend. You will see people walking around in t-shirts, I guarantee it. The source calls the forecast downright balmy, and relative to -35, it absolutely is.
It's fascinating how relative our perception of temperature is. But this volatility,
Yeah.
this swing from one extreme to the other, is this kind of the new normal?
It certainly seems to be the trend. We're seeing fewer of those steady winters where it just kind of stays around 30 degrees for 3 months. Instead, we see these wild oscillations. The jet stream gets wobbly. It plunges deep into the south, bringing this brutal Arctic air, and then it snaps back far to the north, bringing a taste of spring in February. It's a very volatile atmosphere.
So the conclusion here is the pain is acute, but it's short-lived. It's a sprint, not a marathon.
Exactly. This is a 48-hour endurance test.
All right, let's wrap this up. We have covered a huge amount of ground today. For the listener who's just tuning in or maybe whose brain is currently frozen solid, let's just recap the big 3 takeaways for this weekend.
Number 1, the polar vortex. Specifically, a tropospheric lobe that has lunged south, and that is what's bringing the coldest air of the season to 100 million people. It is the engine behind this entire event.
Number 2,
The dangerous wind chills. We cannot stress this enough. We're talking -15 to -35 degrees Fahrenheit. This is life-threatening cold that can cause frostbite in as little as 10 minutes.
and number 3.
The snow squalls. While the total accumulations are low, only 2 to 4 inches along that I-90 corridor, the sudden whiteout conditions and high winds create extremely dangerous travel conditions. It is all about the intensity, not the depth.
And the timeline, just one more time.
Friday is the approach. Saturday is the hammer drop. That's when the worst of the wind and the cold arrive. Sunday's the deep freeze, the absolute bottom. And then by the middle of next week, we finally thaw out.
It really forces you to have a deep respect for the atmosphere. We build our cities, our power grids, our schedules, all thinking we've sort of conquered nature. And then a blob of air from the Arctic decides to take a little vacation south. And suddenly we are all reminded of just how fragile our comfort really is.
It is a very humbling reminder. The atmosphere has more energy in one single gust of wind than we can truly comprehend.
So here's our final thought for you, the listener. This weekend is a test of preparation. Do not underestimate the wind. We've said it a few times, but it bears repeating. 10 minutes to frostbite is faster than a coffee run. It's faster than walking the dog around the block. Please, check on your neighbors, especially the elderly who might be struggling with drafts or high heating costs.
Absolutely. Community really matters in extreme weather like this. Stay warm, keep the pets inside.
And we will catch you on the other side of the freeze. Stay safe out there.
Stay safe.